An international concert tour's main ingredient is, of course, music making. But as I waited at bustling Takadanobaba subway station in central Tokyo, I reflected that there's also a large dollop of goodwill cultural ambassador, and looking ahead toward my evening's destination, a dash of culinary adventure thrown in. A cheery Smurf-like tune signals my train's arrival. Every Tokyo station has its own unique little jingle. It's a stretch to even call it music. Perhaps it's so that blind commuters or hungover businessmen can tell at what station they've arrived. Anyway, that's my theory. I'm on my way to join decades-old Tokyo friends who are treating me to a gourmet kaiseki dinner in the upscale Yoyogi Uehara neighborhood to celebrate the successful conclusion of the Boston Symphony's smoothly planned and executed autumn 2017 concert tour. Its only hiccup, other than when I drank too much sake, was when the orchestra's cargo truck from Tokyo, carrying our string basses and all of our music, arrived in Nagoya 4 hours late, delaying and abbreviating our very first rehearsal. But don't worry, the audience never knew. For the dinner, my friend Tetsuro has brought along a buddy of his, a Japanese violinist named Kiichi Watanabe. As the first delectable courses are served, Watanabe tells me in admirable English that for a time he played in the New Japan Philharmonic, occasionally under my old boss, the legendary conductor Seiji Ozawa, longtime music director of the Boston Symphony, whose tenure there ended in 2002. Thus began a long evening of Who Do You Know? And it was fortunate the dinner had so many courses because the connections were extensive. For example, in the 1990s, Watanabe was a student at the Tanglewood Music Festival when I was playing there at the same time with the Boston Symphony, and where his chamber music coach was one of my former teachers. Not unusual among musicians, shared experiences create deep, enduring bonds that transcend cultural and national boundaries. When Tetsuro asked me if a few weeks had been enough time for me to practice all the music on the tour, Watanabe burst out laughing even before I did, replying, "Of course he did. He's a professional musician." The fraternity truly is universal. How the broader relations between Americans and the Japanese has mended over the past 70 years is close to miraculous. A mere 2 generations ago, members of Tetsuro's family were killed when the atom bomb destroyed Hiroshima. But now his 9-year-old son affectionately calls me Uncle Jerry. That's not to say there aren't reminders of the former divide. Arriving in Nagoya, after a seemingly endless flight over the Pacific, I regained the use of my legs on the orchestra's free day, exploring Nagoya's attractive and modern downtown built upon war-charred ruins. My destination is Nagoya Castle, the city's prominent historic landmark where today children romp among the surrounding gardens and tourists like me lick green tea ice cream cones and take too many snapshots. Adjacent to the fortress is the ancient palace that was totally destroyed during the war, now in its final stages of painstaking reconstruction, using the exact design and same materials as the original. Every detail down to the color of the tiger's eyes in the silkscreen murals, has been lovingly recreated. It's a spectacular achievement, a tribute to the stunning artistry and architecture of old Japan and to the patient dedication of new Japan to throw substantial financial and artistic resources into recreating it. The castle fortress, with its massive stoneworks, is also a reconstruction, but it was rebuilt in 1959 using modern steel and concrete simply to give the appearance of the original exterior. The inside of modern design and functioning as an exhibit space contains a gut-wrenching photo display of the wartime strafing of the city and the castle. Though the destruction of all that exquisite art was tragic and perhaps unnecessary, what must also be considered is the castle's original political military purpose, to effectively unleash its own dogs of war when deemed necessary, inflicting untold casualties and death upon the enemies of the military rulers of the day. Indomitable for centuries, Nagoya Castle finally succumbed in 1945, as all castles, real or metaphorical, inevitably do. Poetic justice? Perhaps not, but one way or another, Nagoya Castle bears witness to the seemingly endless human cycle of brutality and reconciliation. After 4 comfortable days in Nagoya, performing there once, followed by a run-out back and forth to Osaka, then a concert in Kawasaki en route to Tokyo, the positive swing of history cycle could not have been more powerfully demonstrated than at the Boston Symphony's performance on November 7th in the embracing acoustics of Tokyo's Suntory Hall. The featured work on the program was the Symphony No. 11 by Dmitri Shostakovich, entitled The Year 1905. Like many of Shostakovich's symphonies, the 11th is a musically graphic depiction of historic Russian events, in this case, the Revolution of 1905. More specifically, it portrays the tragedy that triggered it, the massacre of peaceful, innocent petitioners, men, women, and children mercilessly shot to death by the Tsar's military forces on January 22nd, 1905, in front of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Depending on which sources you believe, anywhere from 96 to 4,000 people were killed. In the music, we hear the people's prayers. We hear the armies marching. We hear the gunfire. We hear the death and mourning. Finally, we hear the overpowering warning bell. Shostakovich intended this traditional alarm not only as a warning in the historical context of the music, it also tolls as a warning to the audience itself to beware. Beware of the forces of militarism and despotism. Beware of liberty deprived. Seated in the audience for that November 7th Tokyo concert were 2 special guests, Crown Prince Naruhito and Princess Masako, a couple beloved by the Japanese, respected around the world, and who are now the Emperor and Empress of Japan. As we played the Shostakovich, I couldn't help but wonder what was going on through their minds. And from time to time, I looked up at them. They were seated in the first balcony directly across stage from me to see if I could read their faces. For here was the future emperor of Japan, the royal equivalent of the Tsar of Russia, whose grandfather, Emperor Hirohito, had approved the order to attack the United States at Pearl Harbor. Yes, music is to be enjoyed, just like the art at Nagoya Castle. But for Shostakovich, there was much more at stake. For him, music was power. The power to inform, and in the process to educate, to foment, and to heal. True to royal form, the prince and princess betrayed no sentiment other than to appear to greatly enjoy the performance. What a mysterious phenomenon music is. A select group of people spend their lifetimes learning to blow air through tubes, to scrape with horsehair on strings pulled taut over wooden boxes, and to bang on stretched skins with sticks, all to create uniquely complex sets of vibrations, the instructions for which appear as black dots on paper, many of them centuries old. This group of blowers, scrapers, and bangers then travels around the world, where thousands of people of different cultures and histories have spent many hours earning enough money for the opportunity to gather en masse in a very big room and absorb those vibrations into their bodies. Then when it's all over, they slap their hands together and go home. Somehow, miraculously, even when those vibrations are about strife, the strife has gone. Maybe that's why it will be music that saves humanity from the wanton cruelty we seem determined to inflict upon each other. Maybe that's why the goodwill component of tours like the Boston Symphonies to Japan are more critical than we ever imagined. As I say goodnight to my Tokyo friends after our night out on the town, I recall a written sign at Takadano Baba Station as my train arrived and I heard that innocuous little jingle. At first I took the sign's message merely at its face value, but now, upon reflection, it carries the same portentous weight as Shostakovich's warning bell. The sign read, "Doors close soon after the melody ends."